asking them to describe the aliens that was on the cigar-shaped craft. And was describing it, and he said the best way I can describe them is they look like African Americans, right? So I'm already knowing what he's talking about because when he say African Americans, he is looking at it from the Europeanized story of the ancient ones.
Right.
Right. So the signature is the goatee, beard, and the afro.
Mm-hmm.
Right. For clarification, if you go to my Facebook page and you look at my background, it's gonna have one of those guys on there in artistic format. Right. Let me show you. So these are the sons of Ikki. This is on my
Okay.
yeah. So we used to call them the sons of Ikki for a reason. Everything that you see,
they look like you, Ron, with the goatee, the afro, man. They look like you.
look, because they look like the indigenous Americans.
Indeed.
Right. Okay. Now the cylindrical craft is not an inleo craft. Inleo craft look a little different. Inky, he got self penis envy, like he loved his phallus, right? So all of the phallic symbols, your obelisk and all of that, that's Inky worship. But you're not gonna never see it without it being by a Vesica Pisces, right? Which is the Yoni, because he don't believe in two phalluses occupying or two kings ruling the same kingdom, right? So his ship is cylindrical and it's a telltale sign. They even describe it in several Bible stories as being large cigar-shaped craft by description and measurement. Those are Inky's craft. Enlil use a different type of craft, right? So when you see the disc-shaped stuff, those are lesser scientists with different areas of control, right? The little fast flying disc, any of those craft can warp. They can warp. I mean, they can go from being over here and in a moment's notice they on the other side of the world, right? Because they draw two spaces together and they jump energetically from this space to this space, which instantly moved them either around the world or even to another planet somewhere else. By connecting the two dots, it's like folding space-time to make the two dots come together, and then it'll make like a electrical arc. And the arc in the inside of it, it'll be like a wormhole, and it'll pop. They'll be in a whole other location. It's called warping. And so the people that's on there, I refer to them as Black Adams, based on the movie Black Adam, which is the origin story of Shazam. The difference between the Europeanized Shazam and the Black Adam played by The Rock, if you pay attention, The Rock as Black Adam was created by using the energy of multiple Egyptian deities, whereas Shazam used mostly Greek deities and maybe a couple of Egyptian deities. And that was to show you a shift in the control of the energies of the earth. But the Black Adams they vibrate so spiritually high, projectile weapons don't affect them. And if you don't know how to make the certain type of energy weapon that affects them, You can be shooting them arcade with your switches, and they'll be standing there looking at you like you crazy because they in a different frequency and they just outside of the 3 dimension where that stuff can't affect them. And and so I call them Black Adams. I can't figure out no other name to call them because that's the closest people that look like us, other than Simi and Toko. But Simi and Toko wasn't from the warrior class; he was from the priest class, or else it would have been a whole different story they was telling. And even in the Simi and Toko story, he say, "It's we coming. There's a lot of us. You ask for us, we gonna be here." He said, "But I ain't gonna tell you when they coming." Now they know they coming. The only reason I can tell you that they know they coming is because they reported that they know they coming.
Mm.
They put it out in the public domain. That means it's inevitable and they can't stop it. They don't put nothing in the public that they want to conceal from the people because one of us is going to have enough ability to explain to people what they're hearing and seeing that they're going to actually click that this is actually taking place. Your so-called rapture. But the rapture is a story made up by a Southern Baptist evangelical fire and brimstone preacher. The rapture wasn't even part of biblical canon before the Bible came to America. Right? Mm-hmm. So now that the story is in place, they got a similar story in the Anunnaki tablets where they said they was coming back for the Anunnaki that they left behind. So good riddance.
Who's the Anunnaki they left behind, Rod?
They never say. They left some scientists. They in the Christian tradition, which comes out of the Rosicrucian order, they refer to as the Grail lines, the golden ones, and these was your historical king figures and emperors of ancient times, like your Genghis Khan or your Attila the Hun types, who actually had large kingdoms that they ruled as vassal warlords. Because half of the contingent that stayed was warriors, and the other half that stayed was scientists and artisans.
Right. So this Simi Toko, because I've heard a lot about him, especially from Hank Risen's son. So he's from the bloodline of Enki then, Simi Toko.
It's a very good chance. But see, Enki is the science line. So right. They got other brothers and sisters. We only ever talk about Enki, Enlil, and Inanna because they are the ones that's actually fighting for the heritable birthright to Nibiru. Inanna got first right to Earth and Nibiru in the Anunnaki pantheon, and Enlil got first right to Nibiru, and the only way he can take both is he had to conquer Inanna in war, who just so happened to be married to Enki. So Enki not buying it. You're not going to overthrow his wife, but then he got sons that also the sons of Enki. They don't play. Today, the human hybrids is your Dinka tribe, your Zulu tribe. Zulu means skywalkers, right? When they tell you they Zulu, they tell you they star walkers. They walked from the stars. But they didn't walk from the stars like you travel across land. When they say they walked from the stars, they folded space and time and came through the portal. Right? So it's the same thing with the Dogon. The Dogon come from a priest class. That's why they don't be in all of them wars going on with the tribes that surround them, because they not here for war. They here to maintain the frequency and vibration among humanity so that when the time comes, we can wake up from the slumber. They not supposed to do nothing else. Right? So then you got your, what they call your Bantu lines, your Bantu West African lines. Those are all different wives that Enki had children with up and down the Niger River going into the Congo. Right? This is where they hid the gorilla for a reason. You know, they haven't even knew it was a gorilla on Earth for over 150 years yet. Right? They discovered a gorilla back in the late 1800s. So now they know it's a gorilla, but they don't know what it is. They just know it's a primate. But when you study the gorilla is the quintessential patriarchal led pack animal, right? So then the gorilla key becomes the earth key of the primate, and the earth key is called the key Kai in the Lord key to earth, Enki. So then the Enki seat becomes the seat of, as they see it, you can look at it like Horus and Osiris. When Osiris is gone, right, Horus have to build himself into Osiris in order to take the seat. And the only person that can bless him to do it is his mother, or Set, Isis. So without the blessing of the mother, the son can't take the throne. And the only one that the mother is going to bless is the one that's the most like the father.
Hey Rob, with all this knowledge that you have of the Anunnaki and like you real sharp with it. Like if somebody
No, I'm not.
to
Well, it's remember that chick me and Billy was talking about?
who?
Um, she was gonna do a show with him, and I was like, yeah, I like her. She tell the story so clear, and I'm like, man, she tell that better than me, and I was there.
I don't remember who you talking about. I don't remember who you talking
I
about.
forgot her name. Her name, I think her name like Christine or something. But I be sharing her clips on my Facebook. So if you scroll my Facebook, you can't miss her. And it's another one called Illuminati, I think is her moniker and her page.
Mm.
And she be telling me, like, they go into the books. They get only people that could tell it better is somebody that was there.
Mm. Do you anticipate having contact with these entities, whether it's Inky or whatever, being that you know what you know? Do you anticipate in this lifetime them contact? You know, we talk about contact, them contacting you, my brother. Are you anticipating that?
Am I allowed to take the fifth at that part?
Hey, brother, anything you got to do, brother. You know, you you can take the fifth, brother, if you want. You know, the people ain't gonna want it, but I understand. I understand.
Well, look, it's not gonna be no secret.
Yeah.
This is the reason why they're giving y'all disclosure now. Ain't none of this stuff gonna be no secret too much longer. Remember, this is the age of knowing. Everybody can guess what they want to guess and suppose what they want to suppose. They can say who they think right, who they think wrong. But one thing about it, the close of the age, when we just closed out the Piscean age and we just opened up the Aquarian age, the age of knowing. Therefore, all of the belief systems when your head was under the water of the illusion, all them belief systems has been challenged, right? Many of those belief systems was just warped from your ancient spiritual tradition. So it's not going to be no secret who's who on the planet Earth. We've been fighting wars of racism, sexism, political opinions, philosophical opinions, religious doctrine and dogma. We've been fighting all these micro wars because we've been under a warring faction of leadership. In the warring faction of leadership, as long as you warn, they can have peace. Right? Because you don't know who's pulling the strings. But when you reverse engineer everything that's going down on Earth, and you end up in Switzerland, and you end up dealing with bankers that got so much money that they'll make billionaires envious. Right? Like some of these accounts, y'all have to see them to believe the amount of money. I know it's at least one account that can give everybody on Earth. Now it's 8.4 billion people on the planet, or 8.1 now, I think, after the scandemic. But they give everybody $1 billion and won't even put a dent in what they got.
That's how much money they got.
That's how much money they got. It won't even, the interest for a year will cover that, and it will never affect their bottom dollar. This is what we call ancient money. Those are Pharaoh's coffers. Big Mama's bank. But you can't access Big Mama's bank during the time of war. Everybody think a warlock is an individual. That's not what a warlock is. A warlock is when Big Mama lock her bank. And this is why you got to go exhume everything to find out where all of the artifacts is, so you'll know where the deposits is. They think that those is tombs in Egypt with all that gold in it. Those are deposits, them safety deposit boxes. That's all they is. That's why it's all that gold in there. And because somebody put an artistic expression on it, it personalized and gave it a enormous value more than the raw material itself. It became a relic, an artifact.
Right. I want to ask you. Hold on. Let me Google something. Uh, do these entities that vibrate on a high vibration, whether it's Inky or whoever it may be, there's this science of seeing sound that we refer to in this realm called cymatics. So if I play a C major chord, Rod, it'll make a certain symbol if I play that those notes together. Now they say our body is a universe. It's one song, one verse, universe, and we are sound, and we are emitting a sound. So do these higher entities, do they have eyes like these cymatic machines where when they see us, they see vibrations, they see ripples as if you threw a rock in water and it rippled across the water? Is that what they're seeing when they see us? Does it look like a ripple of water that creates a certain vibration? Is that what they're seeing when they see us, my brother?
Um, Visually, when they're looking at us from higher realms, they can perceptually perceive us in our three-dimensional format,
Well, they can see. Okay, okay.
right? But they also will see what we would say the streamer,
Mm-hmm.
which is where's your energy coming from? What source are you connected to spiritually? And your auric field colors is going to tell them so much about you before they even look at you in your three-dimensional form, because they understand the pauper god and they understand that the wolves in sheep's clothing and how they can be deceptive to the naked eye in the 3D, but you can't deceive them when they're coming from higher dimensions. And they vision of the light spectrum is so much broader than ours. We see less than 1%. I'm not sure what their percent is, but in 3D, I'm sure they see at least 10% of the light spectrum, which means they see us in more patterns, like the psychedelic patterns would be
Mm,
more how they would perceive us, and the color combination is going to tell them your whole life history,
mm,
right? So when they look at you in a broad spectrum like that, and then they put all of the light colors together, they know everything you've been through,
mm-hmm.
because everything we go through, it leaves something in our frequency, and this is how they are able to read your palms, read your tarot, read your eyes, your face, and some people can dry read your energy alone and tell you stuff you've been through. But these beings are more developed than us. For one, they get to train so much longer than us. When
Mm-hmm.
we when we get up in age 80, 90 years old, some of the seers in that age bracket is spot on, laser sharp. But remember, they got a cap on on how long they'll be able to learn that before they forget it all and try to remember it again in the next life of 120 years. Where um, juxtapose that by somebody who have 1,000 year lifespan, like so-called Methuselah, or some of the gods that was pre-dynastic during what we call the Septepi, the forever time before the first rule of the pharaoh Nama. The forever time had people that we interpret them to have sat on the throne for 300,000 years. But we don't really know how to interpret the forever time, because that was the time before time was instituted.
Right.
There was no clock system before to keep track of how old these people were. That we didn't have time. Time didn't exist, and that's why they call it the forever time, because the time itself is a micro construct of magnetism in the 3D field, right? It's the way to measure from one event to another as you move through empty space.
Yo, Rod, I remember you just made me think about something because you was talking about earlier. You was talking about Inky and his obsession with the phallus, his phallus, and you was talking about the pharaohs. I remember when the Hebrew Israelites were debating. I think it was Brother Polite or something like that, and they would show mad pictures, and they kept talking about how much Egypt was engaged in homosexuality, and they were showing mad images of the hieroglyphs, and they was like, look at this, look at this, look at this, and they would just say how much ancient Kemet, because they was getting at everybody that's in the Kemet, and it was like, man, y'all niggas is crazy. Whoever's in the ancient Kemet, what's your thoughts on the Hebrews who show, and I ain't trying to start that with the Hebrews, but them talking about, or anybody talking about the hieroglyphs and all the homosexuality that they say you see represented in the hieroglyphs?
That's not homosexuality. That's phallus worship. Phallus worship. Look, phallus worship is alpha male energy. We see it in penitentiary all the time, right? But most people don't know what it's like to have that many men with high masculine traits in that jammed proximity. So you can't see in this open area where you got lesser men, you got males that have never become a man, right? So you can't see it. Most of the ones in prison would have been your leaders had they not been misled by the system. They would have been the ones that pound on their chest and take over. But then they start rounding them all up, putting them in the POW camps, talking about crime. When it wasn't no crime before they came, all of a sudden now we need prisons because we got crime. And we didn't even have police because we ain't need them. We didn't have a word for police. Everybody in the community is responsible for the community. Now, the government is telling you, y'all not responsible for y'all community. We gonna take care of your community. Anything y'all do, we gonna stop you from doing it, like feeding breakfast programs, and then we gonna do it because we your daddy, right? That's the war on the male, under the understanding that when the men realize that the women are the heirs to the earth, and that if we don't fight for the liberation of the divine feminine, then we are destined to lose a war against less than divine masculine. So we have to stand up and say, okay, what's going on? How do we fix it? Who's causing this problem so we can get them out of the mix, right? So all of this stuff is part of masculine energy in its proper outlet. Phallus worship, we hear us talk about it all the time in slang. It's a pissing contest, a dick swinging contest. That's all it is bravado. So when they showing these images of these pharaohs holding a super phallus, it's because he's telling you that he was the most potent of all of the pharaohs before him. Therefore, he got the biggest Johnson.
Okay.
Right. It had nothing to do with homosexuality. Indeed. Unlike Rome, they show male to male penetration in their art. That's a different animal. That I haven't seen that in none of the hieroglyphics I've ever seen. I've never seen male penetrate male in anything out of Kemet.
Indeed. What to just get back to this whole return of the Black Adams, let's talk a little bit about who are the Pre-Adamites. For those who don't know, when there's literature that talks about the Pre-Adamites, for those who don't know, who exactly are the Pre-Adamites, Rod?
All of those species that they said came before Homo sapiens. The Adamite is called the Adama because they say they earthborn. So that means they was made on Earth, but they can't go nowhere else. But you got ancient people called Pre-Adamites and Antediluvians, being before the flood. They call them Tartarians is Tartarus, which is Antarctica, which was an Atlantean civilization. All of those are Pre-Adamites, right? And even when we talk about the the Adamite is only 8,400 years old, and they was genetically altered by the Anunnaki.
So man, you know what I'm saying? So them putting that stuff together after the Smithsonian Institute, because the Smithsonian Institute is 18 right after right now it's 1820 something. This right here, that's the Smithsonian Institute is already well established over here, covering stuff up. These guys over there putting together the what they showing us as Egypt. They building it like a movie set. Not only did they mention that before I go into my question, I already know that we got evidence that they moved a lot of the temples because they said that they were flooded out and they had to move them 200 feet, 600 feet. Some of them depends, right? But a lot of we know that a lot of the how do you move a whole temple? How do you move a whole temple without, you know what I'm saying? So it's a lot going on. What you think about that, Rod? Like they building a movie set in the 1930s.
Listen, that set that you were seeing was a movie set, and the movie set was popularized on those Moses movies and the biblical movies that they was producing in the 40s and the 50s. The only reason why you know that difference between the Giza Plateau and that replica they was building, there's a whole story that go with that film, the backstory to what we were seeing play out in the video, right? And they also got papers about it where they talked about trying to duplicate the construction of the Giza Plateau. So they was filming as they was seeing if they could match the architectural precision and the industrial labor to build a pyramid. But those pyramids is no ways as big as the ones in Giza.
Right.
This is how you know the difference from the set and the Giza Plateau, because one of the stones of the Giza Plateau is 60 freaking tons.
600, 300.
You know, so when we start talking about moving tons, we don't have that technology anymore. It got destroyed in the wars.
Right.
Right. But there is the remnants of the tire tracks that we left behind going through the mud and all of that.
Right.
You know, so they know that we had vehicles. Then when you go to India, the longest continuous record is in the Tibetan caves. And in there, they have actual drawings that's thousands of years old of vehicles. Spaceships. City ships. A whole city on a ship. Right? We used to have a lot of them. But the wars brought them down. A lot of what you see under the ocean is those wasn't cities from the ground. They were cities that were shot out the sky. Right? Earth was way bigger than it is now.
Right.
Right? The original moon ain't there. Right. But I think they're switching it back now. Because when I was looking at some pictures of the moon the other day, they had two crescents, and behind one of the crescents, you could see a full, complete orb that was bigger than the crescent.
Yeah, I saw some weird. What day that was, bro?
A couple days ago, about 2 days ago.
Yeah, I think I seen some weird stuff like that too, and it was an orange hue on it, like an orange hue. I saw it from this angle though.
Yeah. But then you also seen some other planets. You know, so we've seen a lot of stuff going on in the stars over the last few weeks, and then the sun been going bananas, and the shooting resonance been going hog wild. Right? So all that stuff means something. Nature, you can read nature like you read a book, but you have to have a codex to translate it into terms you understand. That's why a lot of the old people, when the wind gusts come through, they can tell you a whole lot of stuff, but they don't know how to translate the wind message into English in a way that you know where they got it from.
Right.
right? So that's the hard part because that show you a whole new vein of drawing information from the area around you.
Mm-hmm.
So the great ambitions of man is always to outdo what he had done before.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to mimic the construction of the pyramids, even if you can't build one as big as the Great Pyramid, whether it's the one over here or the one over there. Because, you know, we got a Great Pyramid over here, too.
40 acres. Wow.
You know, so no matter which one of them it is, the size of the stones, the technology we have today, it don't cut it. It can't move them.
Right.
Right. But when you start talking about using vibration to relax the Higgs boson in order to neutralize the mass matter to reduce the capacity of the overall weight by suspending the densest part of it in the field between the lightest part of the atoms. Because the Higgs boson, the God particle, is the particle responsible for mass. That's why it was a big deal when it was rediscovered.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the God particle, and it's the basic building block of matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's to give each one of the atoms a different density.
Mm-hmm.
Density is what gives you this fixed position illusion in 3D. Otherwise, you would just walk through a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But when you got density and the vibration of the two things can't cancel each other out, you can't walk through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't have density involved, then you meet with another object and you'll cancel each other out because of frequency. Right? It's like shooting two high-pitched sounds at each other and they neutralize each other out. They drown each other out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's how information also go through that same process.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, it gets spread out to the point where it's hard to pinpoint the point of origin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that's what they was doing over there. They was making movie sets. You know, and a lot of the historical narrative they gave us is based on movie scripts that's based on translations of ancient writings.
Right.
And they don't know if none of that stuff is true. They could have been fairy tales for them people back then too.
Right.
Right? We don't know. But we know that the science in there is accurate. Right? Because it's still as amazing as scientists of today. It's the same with the hieroglyphs. The writings on the wall. It's called metal netter, the writings of the gods. But if also you got anatomy in the same writing that you got trigonometry and geometry in the form of an artistic work called a painting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you're looking at this, we're talking the amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
When we're looking at horns, we're talking about the base of the spine, the pons region.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so forth and so on. They all got a different part of the body they represent as the parts in the construction of the grand man.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so this next question, I on the last tape I heard you say something about King Tut's tomb. I also heard Hakeem Bey say something about it, and I found two interesting clips that go along with what you were saying about King Tut's tomb. I'm gonna play those clips, and then maybe you could give. Now we know that's the Watutsis, and they was over here already. And he said, "How did they?" He asked them how they get here from Africa, and we've been saying that these people that come from Africa, they was already over here, and they saying that this go back almost 30,000 years. Because I got more clips that go along, and this lady gonna go talk about the King Tut part. So why they covering this up? How's they covering this up about these people who they say that's Africans was already over here?
Look, they're not covering it up.
Go ahead.
The story they discovering it in real time. America has not been under the archaeological, anthropological scrutiny that the rest of the world been through. So they have to tie everything into the out of Africa theory because that's their point of origin. They started with the idea and the concept that everybody started in Africa. Therefore, that means that if it was somebody over here, they had to come from Africa. Because when you get back past 8,400 years, everybody melanated with nappy hair. Right? So now the justification is everybody melanated with nappy hair is African. But they all came from the land that they own originally. Right? They want to give you the idea that two men, a man and one woman, made all the people on the earth. That's ridiculous. Right? It was tribes all over the earth. They all emerged together. Right? But we have to follow the Darwinian knuckle walking philosophy of turning from a gorilla into a human or a chimpanzee into a human. That's ridiculous. Right? But because we don't have the memory of what we are, who we are, then we gonna go with the most popular narrative because that's what the most people say is the narrative to follow. It don't make it true. All of the discoveries over here, most of them are under 150 years old because it was too much war going on to survey and dig up archaeological digs in the middle of the colonization process because we was fighting like a mofo.
Right.
All over the land. The only thing that stopped us is a truce, a ceasefire based on the Conjure War. Educate yourself about the condition in the end of 200 years. We'll see who can settle it then.
Right.
Wasn't no high chiefs when they came over here. Everybody was a chief in training. All them great chiefs you read about in the history books that was fighting the colonizers, they was trainee chiefs. No high chiefs, but all of the real high chiefs was letting the other chiefs run the land. They got to get the practice. So because all of the high chiefs was between lives, probably, right, they check out and then we get attacked. And the ones that's in the positions, they got to do the best they can with what they know, but they're not the best strategists we have. They're not the best warriors that we have, right? So when we call them for strategists, we need somebody that can unravel everything, tell us what the strategy is and what the remedy is, and based on what's going on, the system is going to eventually fall to the demands of the original people. They have to because it's law. It's galactic law that overrides universal law. This is the close of the age, and at the close of the age, we had to close all of the conjures. That's how they knew when John D. told Queen Elizabeth about putting us into this hypnotic trance using the first blood of the righteous. Crispus Attucks, first blood of the Revolutionary War, to put some people in the land in the slumber and then miseducate them. In from the Rockefeller Templar movement to disorient our mind from what part of the land we from by giving us this direction called Africa.
Right.
But we didn't call it Africa, and we've been dealing with them people and marrying them people for thousands of years before Europe was even fully developed. Now all of a sudden, there's no connection, and they brought us all over here from over there. But they don't got it in their oral histories about no mass exodus of people from Africa. So we know that's not true. Right? And they tell you in the with those slave things that they got put up on the coast for you to go visit where your ancestors left from.
The Ivory Coast.
They tell you when you go on tour over there, if you ask them, wasn't no pale faces in no motherfucking trade back then.
Right.
There was all nappy hair, woolly hair Arabs.
Right.
That looked like any other Negro. And they was calling themselves Jews. later. At the time, they was mariners, merchants of the high seas. This is how they developed the Uniform Commercial Code to enforce the jurisdiction of admiralty, and the only thing they had was to try to figure out how to apply the admiralty salvage rights to the land.
Yeah.
And they've been pillaging us ever since under the squatter right, under the salvage rights, right? And they've been using eminent domain in order to continue the search for more of the civilis mortis, the black folks, labeled dead, lost at sea.
Yeah.
Right? The reverse side of the coin is they talking about the stealth priests, the ones who we know is going to emerge on the land, but if we got to stop them, if we don't want them to reclaim their birthright, because all they have to do is put it in the public domain. And when enough people get a hold of understanding of what's taking place, then the changing of the guard takes place. And we there now.
They burned these, and Nana mentioned something about her daughters being burned at the stake when they first came. And it's about around 150 years when they said that these people could come back.
You remember she talking about when she said her daughters got burned when they first came, and that was the gender war when it first started.
Mm-hmm.
The daughters of Isis, the daughters of Inanna, it depended on where the sacerdotal seat was, depending on which one of them, or the daughters of Kali if it was the sacerdotal seat in India.
Yeah.
Right? If the sacerdotal seat was in Kemet, it's the daughters of Isis.
Right.
If it's in Babylon, it's the daughters of Inanna or Ishtar, depending on the era. Right? Because it moved from one side of the Babylonian Empire to the other. So what we call Sin is a son of Enlil, men are Sin.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the military strategist who wrote this 120 degrees of trigonometry, Yakub story. How to usurp and undermine the people, and how to confuse them using magic, politics, science as tools of war. Then they incorporated religion and entertainment into it, because if they can get the politics, of course, religion is only one step away from politics.
Right.
If you go back a couple 50, 60 years, the preachers had just as much power as an attorney. He used to be able to go in and get people out of jail for free because they was clergy. Now the clergy ain't got no juice. They got all the money, ain't got none of the power. The only time that happens is when people sell out. They got all of the money and none of the power. They got mega churches full of people with all of the money and none of the power.
Right. And they teach prosperity. That's what their whole it was. They gave them, it's like a list they can preach about. So dude came out and made a comment about that, about the loans, that they only give certain people loans and to be part of that organization. Hey, but back before I go sideways, let me ask you one more question about the video we just watched. He also mentioned there that this was the son, that they found pharaohs buried there. This 3,000
Sun Kings.
Yeah, it says pharaohs. Go ahead.
So when they call them Sun Kings, they are. Remember what me saying before? Everybody, when they call somebody Sonny boy, son, they try to do he's born to be a chief.
Right.
It's the same. It's the same underlying principle. Right. In Greek, it would be Helios. Right. Which also means fire.
Right.
You get your idea of the doctrines of hell. Are those doctrines that overcomes the conjures of the Babylonian powers. So when we're talking about this power of the sun, We're talking about learning to adapt to the solar rays and use that solar energy for spiritual awakening. And then there's a way that the sun will tell you it's time to wake up. And we in that time now, and this is why they're waiting on the great solar flash. Because he's going to give out a super flash that's going to make the earth orgasm. And everything that don't belong on here when she scream, out of here.
Mm-hmm. All right, this next one it goes more dealing around the King Tut thing, but that guy just was before, so he already verified that. Hey man, we've been finding stuff, but they go back 30. We don't even know how. We just say 30. It might be older, and it's Phoenicians and people already over here. So that's what he called them, but that might not what they call themselves.
Yeah, the Phoenicians were seafaring Canaanites.
Go ahead.
And they were some of the earliest versions that became later known as Blackamoors and Blackamoor Jews.
Man, they people was already over here. And it's funny. It's funny how you just said that the sun, then you tied it in with fire, and then that ties in with the city of Aura, fire, Felicians, and somebody say we have suspect that he could have had some kind of extraterrestrial mix like a cone heads, because they were saying that he was a Morphodite, and then but this is the thing. Based on what the old boy said, 30,000 Felicians over here. They finding King Tut's tomb over here. That all lines up with all of. I got more evidence that we're gonna play, but could you go in on that? They finding King Tut's tomb in Kentucky, and it lines up with old boy saying about finding the tombs. All the valleys of the valleys. Go ahead.
So you got to remember, it was a while after the announced discovery of King Tut tomb that they take the King Tut exhibition on tour. Right? They did a parody about King Tut's tomb on Abbott and Costello of them discovering it. Then at the beginning of the show, they come into the office, they in Hollywood. Right? And then in the next scene, they going into the pyramids. Right? So the connection is the story of the discovery of Mammoth Cave. When you go do your research on Mammoth Cave, you'll find that it had a burial site of multiple graves. That's what the girl was telling you. The Valley of the Kings in Mammoth Cave. Right? That's the underground tunnels that they represented. It's just to do the layover. You can get the diagram of Mammoth Cave, and then you can get the picture of the Valley of the Kings tomb sites, and then you can do an overlay.
Yeah, that's what she did. And if it stands the reason, if King Tut's over here, then all the rest of them that probably was before him, going back 30,000 years to old boy Cave, son of the Galilee Cave, they all was over here. And we're going to get to some of this. Let's go into one of these next clips on why some of this could be happening, why this could be covering up like this.
One thing he said, that the Creeks is the Greeks. All that's overlay. All that biblical shit, that's overlay. All of these cities in the country named after biblical cities was after the fact names. There wasn't the names before colonization. All you got to do is look up when they was chartered, because that's when they was named.
Right.
They had to be named in the charter. The fact that they need a charter, meaning that they need somebody to okay them to name and claim that territory. That's part of the salvage rights. Right? So we operate in government, they step on our government, and then they put their government in place of ours. That's what they need charters for. We didn't need charters for our villages. Most of them was on a family farm anyway. And then we lived off the the produce at a farm. We didn't have no grocery stores. We didn't need them.
Mm-hmm.
We need some eggs. We go out to the chicken coop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got them big old uncles out in the barn slaughtering cows.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was bison before they came, but when they switched the stock out.
Hey, y'all hit that like, hit that subscribe button. Huh?
Yeah, so once they switched to the livestock we use from.
It got you real low, what? Did we echo?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's back normal now.
Yeah, somebody was trying to call in, but I forget where I was at. Oh, when they switched out the livestock, we adapted. We adapted to everything they threw at us.
Right.
Right, and now it's time for the big payback.
But he said that the part he said about the gopher wood. I got a whole tape on it, and I got a couple of clips from that tape that I'm gonna play in just a minute. That's only found in Florida. So if Noah, we know some of this stuff could be allegory, and some of this stuff they found in the gimmicks, epic and leash. We saw a similar storyline, but what we saying is if he used gopher wood is found in Florida. So how do they get around that, bro? How do they get around that part? The Bible?
They lie. They flat out lie.
Okay, go ahead.
That's only look when the truth comes. The only way you combat the truth is to tell a lie that is convincing enough for people to believe over the truth. It's the only thing they can do. That's why they keep telling me we are from Africa. We are not from no damn Africa. Right. And the people think when we say that it's a knock on Africans. It's not a knock on Africans.
Go ahead.
Right? It's a knock on colonizers trying to disassociate us from the land by telling us we're from somewhere else so that they can hold the rights to the land because we don't know who we is and we at home. So if we at home and we don't know who we is, they don't got to give us nothing.
Right.
But once they understand that we know who he is, we know who runs whose territory this is, by birthright, all we do is put it in the public domain. It's the land of Tahuti for a reason.
Right.
Right? So even when you go back, everything in the Emerald Tablets start over here.
Right? That's facts.
You know, so we can chop it up however we want to. It's just that this narrative has been controlled with misinformation, propaganda, and disinformation.
Right.
Misinformation is designed to make you believe something that's not true. Disinformation is to steer something that could be true in the wrong direction.
Right.
To make you follow a different trail than the trail you should be following.
Right.
Right? Propaganda is used to flood the market with so much of a type of information that it got to be true because there's too many people saying it.
Right.
Even though it's not true. It was just made up. Like the United States was the government for the people. It was intended to be that way when it started, but it wasn't for the people of the land. It was for the people that came.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't never supposed to cross the Appalachians. They weren't never supposed to deviate from their 13 colonies, but they used the law of warfare to assert their jurisdictional claim.
Mm-hmm.
And we fell for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This guy also mentioned another piece where he said that I think I already asked that question. I'm gonna roll this next one. Rod, so the part that I want to talk to you about on what she said, and she said a lot too. She said some good stuff. But we being attacked by several different countries at one time from different angles. And when I look at the maps, I'm starting to realize that, hey, when they took over this area, if they were from France, they called it what they want. So it might have been, if it might have been what we called it, then they called it something else. or even they might have called it exactly what we called it, just in their own language. Like Chicago goes back to Stanky Onion. So could you go in how they strategically seven different countries attacked us all at once? So this must have been an organized plot to steal our land.
You got to go back to the French Revolution, the Spanish Inquisition, because the people that's being kicked out of these countries and the adjacent countries is the ones that we fight, not the country itself.
Okay.
Right? They looking for a homeland. They look like us, but they not us.
Uh-huh.
In order for them to claim a piece of land, they have to report back to the people that kicked them out and say, can we stay here?
Right.
Right? So this is where you get your multiple countries. They came from all of those European countries because that's where the Great Inquisition took place to oust the people that they was calling them Jews and Moorish Jews at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But when they kicked them out of their land from over there, they had a outreach port to collect them in what was at the time called Al Maghrib, which today we know as Morocco, Tunis, and Algeria in that territory. Now, they don't name it Africa until the Berlin Conference that takes place in the 1800s.
Right.
This is when they changed from calling it Ethiopia to Africa. Right? And then depending on where you're from, and some people call it Sudan,
right.
You can see it written across the old maps.
Right.
Okay, now, they using this false narrative they giving us, so we don't know that when the invasion happened, who was invading. So they had to create a class system, caste system, based off the scroll of government that they end up getting from invading India. So you got to look at when they was, before they ever came over here, they invaded the Indus Valley under Alexander the Great, under several Constantines. They keep going over there, invading India and what's today known as Pakistan, but all that was Hindustan at the time. It's the misnomer or fallacy that Columbus thought he was in India, because India wasn't named India until the 1940s or 50s. So whoever wrote the history books told that story after India was named India. The story can't be before that, because there's no way that somebody contemporary with the times wouldn't have knew that that place ain't called India, it's called Hindustan. Right? And it consisted of parts of Nepal, and all of that was all part of it. The Himalayan mountains, all that was Hindustan. This is who they conquering. What they looking for? Well, Alexander, once he conquered them, they said that he conquered the world for the next 2,000 years. Right? We're looking at, what did he go there for? It takes us back to a story in the Sumerian tablets about Humbaba still in the scrolls of destiny. Right? Which is the scrolls of government. How to manage and govern masses of people. Without having to micromanage every last one of them. So it tells you don't control the person, control the systems. Control the flow of the information. You create a caste system and people will fight to stay in their position. Miseducation of the Negro 101. Right. If you teach them to use the back door, it don't matter. If you ain't got no back door, you go build one just so you can stay in this place. Right. Right? It's the same information given by a different elder at a different time to tell us the same thing. They use them the scrolls of government. According to Neely Fuller, it covered 9 areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. I say they add health because though none of them 9 matter if you don't got good health. So that's the 10 scrolls, right? So when you look at your statesmen, all your great statesmen at one point were physicians, medicine men, herbalists, right? Even though old Wooden Tooth George was a marijuana farmer, so when we're looking at stuff with the modern lens, we had to adjust for what was going on in the earlier time. Mm-hmm. Right? Take into consideration they didn't have grocery stores, they didn't have corner stores, liquor stores, everything that somebody made, they had to get it from the manufacturer, the person that made it, or you couldn't have access to it. Mm-hmm. Right? So it was a brother building cars before Henry Ford using the assembly line method, but he don't get the credit because it breaks the caste system. So they're using all of those different tools of war, and the claiming of a territory, claiming of somebody's birthright land, it got to be nobody from the land that's objective. Mm-hmm. They all got to surrender and submit. In order to get that many people to surrender and submit, you got to miseducate them all. And then you got to take out the ones that they call the dissident. Right? The dissident is the one who they say is bucking the system. He bucking the system. I mean, he don't want to go along with the fairy tale. He wants some real information to be put on the floor. How am I supposed to be paying child support and I don't got no contract to pay? Right. Show me the contract. Where the contract at? Right? So they want you to go through their system so they can tie you down to a contract. Adhesion contracts are fraud contracts. And fraud vitiates all contracts. Mm-hmm. If you don't voluntarily enter into a contract, it's a fraudulent contract. All of these treaties are fraudulent contracts for 2 reasons instead of one. One, they was all predicated upon fraud. The fraud comes in when they had ulterior motive for putting the treaty out in the first place. Right. Now, which takes us to the second reason why the fraud on the treaties are fraudulent. Because they never honored one. And they haven't been able to produce one that they honored. But they haven't also produced one that the native didn't honor, that he gave up in good faith. Right. Right? Yeah, we mad at the $5 Indians because they're Mongolians, but guess what? Just like we didn't know at one point that we wasn't from Africa, they don't know they from Asia. Right. Go ahead, Robert. So we mad at them for being taught our history is their history. But one thing we got to realize, in order for them to be able to practice our dances on their rituals, so one of us had to teach it to them. Because it don't come natural to them like it do us. Nuh-uh. So we had to have some of us teaching it to them. And one of the things that they knew that was going on in the early reservation days, and this is how we got blended in with them too. A lot of them are coming from off our bloodlines by secondary descent. Right? And that means that somebody from our bloodline married into their bloodline. So now they got a drop of blood. Mm-hmm. Right? In the great melding pot. Where one drop of blood make you black. Lost at sea. Right? But if you can pass, then go about passing so that you can reap the benefits of the society. And there's more of them passing now than it is does not. Right. But we don't understand genetics, phenotype, genotype in order to be able to read the activated one drop of blood when we see it in the other people. When they came, they couldn't dance. They couldn't catch a beat. They couldn't sing. Their vocal cords was undeveloped. Their muscle tone was undeveloped. Now they bodybuilders, looking like original Mississippian with the striations between the fibers of the muscle. Come on now.
Yeah.
If you don't know phenotype, it won't make sense. If you don't know what came over here, you won't even be able to recognize what's here. The king, the one gave them the right to rape and pillage the women of the land. Because that was part of the spoils of war. Now we live in a rape culture.
King James, to be exact. If we can put it right. Huh? Yeah. 1611 King James. 1611 King James.
Now remember, 1611, we had already been fighting them people 200 years.
Yeah. Since the Spanish Conquistadors, yeah.